Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel will be Brandon Hammer, Ryan Frazier, TJ Alexander, James Wallace, Jorge, Nany, Noriega, and Myles Bernat with their talk titled Freshman Chapel Talk. Brandon Hammer is from Rochester, Indiana, and attended Tippecanoe Valley High School. He plans to major in psychology and minor in biology. Brandon is currently a member of the Wabash wrestling team and is an independent living in Williams Hall. The title of his talk is Take Hold of the Pen. Ryan Frazier is from Gary, Indiana. He is currently unsure in what he plans on studying, but he is exploring his options. His one and most important goal in life is to take care of those closest to him. He is a brother at Tau Kappa Epsilon and enjoys hammocking with his roommate, Evan. The title of his talk is Gratitude in Action, Acknowledging the Support of Others. TJ Alexander is from Indianapolis, Indiana. And plans to major in economics and minor in business. He is a wide receiver on the football team and a brother of the Sigma Chi fraternity. He is the CEO of his own haircutting business, Teej Cuts, and serves as the secretary for the barber club here on campus. His future goals include continuing his journey as an entrepreneur and attending graduate school after Wabash to earn his CPA. The title of his talk is Work Hard, Be Tough, and Do Good Things. James Wallace is a financial economics and He's a financial economics and computer science double major from Houston, Texas. He is a brother of Phi Gamma Delta and serves as the House's IFC representative and house manager. On campus, he is involved in Wabash Christian Men, Wabash Rugby, The Bachelor, and the CIBE. James believes in seizing opportunities and plans to live by this during his time at Wabash. The title of his talk is I'm Only Speaking Today to Get an A. Understandable. Jorge Nany Noriega is from Hammond, Indiana. As of right now, he is a biology major and psychology minor. After Wabash, he plans to attend medical school with aspirations of becoming a neurosurgeon. He is a brother at Phi Delta Theta and enjoys playing soccer in his free time and also loves playing video games. The title of his talk is The Freshman Experience. And then finally, we have Myles Bernat, who is a biochemistry... Myles is a biochemistry major and a classics minor. Myles is a brother of Delta Tau Delta and a varsity soccer team member. He enjoys being with his family, hanging with his friends, and playing with his bulldog, Frank. The title of his talk is The Masculinity of Fitting In at Wabash. Let's give a really warm welcome to these freshmen.
Good morning, Wabash. Before I start, I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. I'd like to thank the Sphinx Club for allowing me to speak today and Dr. Pitter for giving me this opportunity with our EQ class. So to start, I would like to start by conveying an idea we can all relate to. The question that some view as the most important question we can ask: who am I? When we hear this question, our minds go directly to things like our name or where we're from, or maybe other things that you value someone should know: where we go to school, our majors, the sports we play, who we associate with, whether that be your house brothers or your teammates. In EQ, we were given this assignment of the chapel talk. I took interest in the idea of identity. I took the time to surround myself with an environment where I could think profoundly about the question of who am I. Where did I initially go with this? Just the normal constructs of what I had previously stated. But once I really started taking the time and familiarizing myself with the many parts of my identity, whether it be what I found to be near and dear to my heart, or the activities I enjoyed, I found myself pondering for hours. But I realized something concerning. Once searching my mind for the puzzle pieces of who I am, many of the motivations of what I choose to be was for the satisfaction and approval of others. Whether it be authority figures in my life, family, or peers, a lot of what I considered to be important to me was because of the approval of others. The greatest example I can give in this instance would be being a younger brother. Where I began to give in to the expectations of those around me was my high school years. Expectations were never directly set for me. It was the assumption that I would be similar in many attributes, and when not meeting those expectations, I feared being seen as lesser. My parents never directly commanded that I must be better or the equal of my brother. But the pressure was felt nonetheless with every achievement that he reached. But it was not only the fear of disappointment in the eyes of my parents, but it was also with teachers who had had him in the past and had expectations of what I instantly could have been. Not to say this was entirely inclusion of negativity, it was an assumption of who I am due to a relation to another person and being entirely associated with them. As many siblings may be able to relate to the need to be better than the other in all aspects, when I had been thinking back to the impact the experience of constant pressure had on me, I thought about when this became evident to me. Was it the drive to be a better athlete than my brother? Was it to have a higher GPA? And even now, is it the drive to get my diploma and make more money than him someday? Why did I directly associate every goal I had to beat him out? It wasn't to make him feel lesser. It was to make me feel better. So evidently, when I didn't achieve something, it hurt worse than it should. Now, what does this have to do with identity? Well, with every moment that figures I looked up to seen me as the little brother, it made me do everything to make my own identity. But paying attention to the label made it true to me. I was entertaining the idea of trying so hard to be something else that I was backtracking in my own mental state and putting myself down, as if I wasn't already something to be proud of and had something to still work for, which may seem like a positive, which at points it was, but never being able to be the exact same as the expectation is where the struggle was. From this, I started to realize how fragile our identities are if we allow them to be. If we let those around us interpret what we should be, we will never truly be happy with who we are, because we do not know what the outsider's truth of us is. Not being afraid to take a hold of the pen and write our own stories is where we will find peace in ourselves. I started to realize the importance of one's story with EQ's teachings. A discussion topic that Dr. Pittard had presented our class with was a TED Talk by Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, titled The Danger of a Single Story, which I encourage you all, if you have not listened to this TED Talk before, please do. It's very eye-opening. Adichie in her TED Talk explains that our lives and cultures have overlapping stories. Overlapping stories allow for misconception, and with misconception comes negativity to those whose story is not written by them. With most of the stories Adichie had explained, one being her own experiences being someone of African heritage in America, with her college roommate at the age of 19 reading Adichie to be associated with negative African stereotypes. Not knowing English or how to work a stove, for instance. Her roommate only figured there to be one story of Adichie when there was another, the true story. Adichie knowing English, the knowledge of mainstream music, and basic appliance use. Most stories we try to put upon a person is a negative one, and heavily the wrong one. Adichie expresses the importance of not seeing one story with a person, but consider that they have a different truth than what's on the outside or what is assumed without knowing them. The idea of the one story is one I connected with, because those in my community knew one story of me for sure. I was the younger brother. I had expectations to live up to, but did I? In my mind, yes. For the satisfaction of others, I think so. But why did I believe this so wholeheartedly? I gave up on opportunities to be different and take a different approach to what was expected of me. Why did I not pursue this? It is because I took that story and cited it word for word. I never considered it being my own work, but from what I've learned in the process of making this chapel talk is that my story is not finished. I continue to allow myself to be impacted by those around me and putting labels upon me. I will never branch off and become my own person and take a hold of my own identity. Instead, no longer will I carry the heavy burden of the expectations of others on my back. Instead, I can comfortably carry my own identity through the trials of life and be proud of it, prioritizing the best things for me, not for others to approve of me and tell me I'm doing fine. Instead, I can reassure myself that I've done all I could and find satisfaction in that. So if I may, I would like to wrap up with this. For the longest time, I allowed my identity to be predetermined and never took control myself. We all know our own truth of who we are, what and who we love, So don't let others tell you what those are. Don't let expectations, stereotypes, grievances of others determine your own identity. Instead, please, take a hold of the pen and keep writing your story. Thank you.
Good morning, Wabash. I would first like to thank the Sphinx Club for giving me the opportunity to speak at today's chapel. I would also like to give thanks to my brothers Atik, Mrs. Pittard. And finally, I want to thank my dad, who isn't here, but I want to start off with a quote. The expectations others set for us help us form our expectations of ourselves. This quote was said by Westmore. He's one of the many authors whose books we have read in EQ this semester. When I read that quote, it made me think about the expectations in my life people have set for me. I thought about where I am now and how I got here. The only reason I pushed myself like I did was because of the people around me. They set these expectations that subconsciously I tried to achieve. If they thought I could do it, why couldn't I? To understand what I mean, I'm going to share a story. One where I was able to show gratitude for the people who supported me. Going into high school, my dad always told me to get straight A's and to work hard. He told me that if I start something, I need to see it all the way through. At that time, I didn't think much of what he was saying, or at least I thought. Slowly but surely, I built habits, ones that he would instill in me, not by doing them, but by expecting them out of me. I woke up on time each day, went to school, did my work, participated in activities outside of school, and so much more. As my high school career went on, I became involved in more activities, ones that would teach me lessons I'll never forget. I worked hard each day eventually to come to senior year. That would be the year I found out if I was valedictorian or not. As those were the expectations set for me, I didn't want to fail. It didn't come until later on in the semester where I found out whether I would be valedictorian. By then, I was sure I wasn't, though. Not because of how late it was, but because I was sure someone else had worked harder than me. But even with that possibility, I wasn't going to be at the top. I still kept working hard. Eventually came the day where I was told what position I held in terms of class lineups. They pulled me into the guidance office and had me stand in a room with a table and a couple of chairs. Now, I'm just assuming this is where the teachers ate. It was very bland, empty. There wasn't even a poster on the wall. I was left alone for a few minutes until eventually they came back in. They asked me where I thought I was in the class lineup. I guessed second. No. Third, they told me no again. I kept going on and on, so unsure of myself, until finally they told me I was co-valedictorian. It's not as cool to say, I know, but it's just as meaningful, okay? We both had the same GPA, down to a T. But it was at this moment that they told me I'd have to give a speech in front of hundreds of people. Something I had worked for years was finally in the palm of my hand. On the day of graduation, I was nervous. Not as nervous as I am right now, but it's fine. The ceremony went through like every other, principal giving a speech, students walking out. You guys know the whole spiel. The moment came where it was my time to give my speech. I was the last one to talk before they started handing out the diplomas. Being on that stage, I could feel everyone's eyes staring at me. Just a quick side note, by the way, giving a talk in the chapel is way cooler than that ever was. Like, this is just insane. Like, crazy. I gave my quick 5-minute speech with the intention everyone felt motivated to start the next stage of their lives. However, during my speech, that's not what I was thinking about. The only thoughts that ran through my head were the people who helped me get there. My dad, coaches, friends, and teachers. The only reason I was standing on that stage was because of them. They all held high expectations of me, ones that helped me shape the way I thought of myself. My dad always made sure I had my work done. My coaches always expected me to give the best effort in everything I did. My teachers always expected me to turn in my work on time. And my friends expected me to push myself farther than I thought I could. All of those expectations helped me get to that one moment. After receiving our diplomas, I went and found my dad. I gave him the biggest hug I've ever given anyone. And I thanked him for everything he had done to help me, everything he had done to get me to that one moment. After that, I went and found the other people who had set these expectations or supported me in some way. I thanked them. There wasn't much I could do other than give a thank you. I just wanted them to know I appreciated and was grateful for everything they did. If it wasn't for the people who helped me get there, I wouldn't have been giving a speech on that stage. I wouldn't even be at Wabash. So that's probably enough of my story now. You probably think of yourself for a while now, the cliche questions. Why is he telling us this? What does this have to do with me? Well, at the beginning of the talk, I mentioned that quote, the one about expectations. It made me think about who had set expectations for me in my life. I want you to do the same. I want you to think back on the things you've done and think about the people who either supported you directly or set expectations for you, ones that motivated you. I don't see you guys thinking. Do you got someone in your head? Are you thinking of someone? You? All right, good. Now, after this talk, I want you to call them, text them, or talk to them directly if you're sitting right next to them. I want you to thank them for helping you because you didn't do it alone. We all have people to thank in our lives for something. I want you to show appreciation for the support people have given you, even if it was just something they said. If you think you've done everything by yourself, you're wrong. There has been someone in your life who has helped you accomplish something in some way. So show them gratitude. Thank you, Wabash.
Good morning, Wabash. I'm really thankful for this suit jacket right now because it's covering up the pools of sweat under my armpits. I want to start off by thanking Dr. Pittard and the Sphinx Club for allowing me this wonderful opportunity to share a few words with you guys this morning. Also, congrats to the newly initiated Rhines. I also want to shout out my Aunt Kim, my Aunt Teresa, and my Uncle Danny for making the trip here today. It means a lot to me. And most importantly, I want to shout out my mom and dad. They actually had no idea I was the one speaking today. I just told them. About a month ago, I told them there was going to be an awesome speaker today, and I strongly encouraged them to come. So, the awesome speaker is me, Mom and Dad. The reason I wanted them to be here today is because in my talk, I want to remember and honor the lives of two extremely influential men that I was lucky enough to spend the first 18 years of my life with. And those two men happen to be both of their fathers. This past fall was a tough one for the Alexander and the Taylor family, as we mourn the death of both my Grandpa Bill and my Grandpa Tim. Now, I intend for this talk not to be a sad one, but rather one that shines a light on what I learned from the incredible lives of these two great men. My mom's dad, my Grandpa Bill, served in the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War, was a Kokomo police officer for 20 years, and worked several jobs, all while raising 6 kids and maintaining a 65-year marriage. I could always count on my Grandpa Bill to be at my basketball games in middle school and high school, sitting courtside on his walker where I could see him. I had plenty of rides home with him where he let me hear about all the plays I didn't give enough effort on, or if I was just being a sissy. He was the definition of tough love. He was always hard on me in sports and in life, constantly trying to teach me to always strive for more and never settle for less than my best effort. I always saw him like my second dad. The things I'll never forget about Grandpa Bill was how good of a cook he was, his loyalty to the ones he loved, and his generosity. Even until his final days, where he was still able to boss people around to drive-in places, he would bring me these sandwiches I loved from this market, from Kokomo all the way down to Indianapolis, what seemed like every other week when I was in high school, just because he knew I was a teenage boy who was always eating. He didn't care that it took a large chunk of his day away, or for the person who was driving him around. He had a huge heart, even if he tried to hide it at times. But most of all, I looked up to my Grandpa Bill's toughness. The thing I'll miss most about him is listening to all the crazy stories he told me about his time in the Marines and as a police officer. Every time he got going, he had a new story to tell. He also had plenty of stories about his football career back in his heyday. And I could listen to those stories for hours, and I would. As a kid, I always remember wanting to be big and tough like him, and I still do today. He always told me that, and no matter what I did, if I work hard and be tough, I can accomplish anything I want to in the world. My dad's dad, my grandpa Tim, served in the U.S. Army Reserves and worked for the same pharmaceutical company for 40 years. He dedicated his life to supporting his family, relocating from Ohio to New Jersey to Michigan and back to Indiana, all for his job. And he also dedicated his life to community service. He volunteered most of his retirement days toward the Sertoma Club of Broad Ripple in Indianapolis, the Holy Spirit at Geist Catholic Church, and donated to many charity organizations, including the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the Peyton Rieckhoff Foundation, which is a very near and dear organization to my family. He was extremely devoted to his faith, and he was also a 3-time cancer survivor. Grandpa Tim made an unbelievable effort to stay in touch with my 2 sisters and I through text messages, Twitter, and making frequent spontaneous visits during the evenings to have dinner with us and just catch up. When I say he texted me before every baseball, basketball, and football game, I mean every single one of them. He always knew when I was playing, and I could always count on him with my Grandpa Bill to be at my games when he could. The texts he would send me before games read numerous sentences of encouragement and always ended with the message, lead your team and play like a champion. He had a contagious laugh, a hysterical sense of humor, and always supplied lemon lime Gatorade during the summers when we would go swim in his pool. He was also always the best dressed in the room. If I had to pick one thing that will always stick with me about Grandpa Tim, it would be how he always made me and other people feel. He radiated kindness and was always so supportive of the path people were on, to whatever their goals and aspirations were. One of my favorite last memories with him was when he took me out to dinner before I headed off for college, where we reflected on my high school days and dreamt about the exciting days to come in the future. He always had words of advice and encouragement, but his most famous ones were always when he told people to do good things. In EQ, the question of what it means to be a man has been the source of numerous conversations throughout the second semester. And the more I think about what that answer is to me, I can't help but think of my grandpa's lives. Ironically, I think many of the attributes that I learned from my grandpas are the same ones that are instilled in all of us as Wabash men. A man to me is somebody who works hard in every aspect of their life while treating everyone they encounter with kindness. It's somebody who does favors for people just for the heck of it. It's somebody who loves his family unconditionally and makes personal sacrifices so that they can achieve their own goals and life endeavors. A man to me stays tough through trying times and pushes through adversity. He leans on his faith during situations that seem like there's no silver lining. He takes a little time out of his day to send a quick message of encouragement to his friends and his family. And he appreciates all stages of life, whether good or bad, and he supports you through each one of them. A man to me is a leader. It's somebody that people know they can count on. Somebody that may not always have the answers, but always gives you hope that everything will work out. He's somebody that fights to maintain relationships throughout times of difficulty. A man to me is the combination of the lives of both of my grandpas. Their lives were a roadmap for me to follow, an example of how to work hard, be tough, and do good things. All of these attributes they taught me about being a man helped me get through the tough transition from high school to Wabash. Balancing football, school, maintaining relationships, and going through pledgeship. There were lots of days where I didn't want to get up out of my bed, and days where I didn't know how I'd get to my next practice, next class, or meeting. And I still have those days. But what I always think about is what my grandpas would do, and they would fight through it. They would want me to persevere and finish the job. Having this in the back of my mind made me stay engaged for 5 more minutes in class, go that much harder in a drill, or think one more positive thought. All I needed was a thought of them and the legacy that I want to leave on the world. I hope that I can live my life so that one day when I have my own grandchildren, I can leave the same impact on them that my 2 grandpas left on me. Thank you.
Good morning, Wabash. With this being a chapel talk, I of course must start by thanking the people who have helped me to reach this moment in my life. Thank you to my parents and brothers back home and my Fiji brothers here on campus for providing me with a second home. I also want to thank Dr. Pittard and the Sphinx Club for giving us this platform. So now, onto the subject of my talk. As this semester comes to an end, we are only weeks away from every Wabash man in this chapel from having completed enduring questions. Thus, we will all have spent an entire semester questioning who we are and what our purpose is in this world. While both of these are important questions, I would like to focus on our purpose in this world, specifically as Wabash men receiving an education. Our purpose as students is to learn. This may seem obvious, but I think it is such a basic part of education that we sometimes forget this. The constant grind at Wabash can often block out the basic focus we have as students, replacing it with others instead, such as a hyper-focus on grades. In fact, I think this is most prevalent at Wabash when it comes to the way many of us view our grades. I've always been the type of student that defines themselves by the grades on the report card. I did whatever it took to get that A and sacrificed anything for a good grade. And while grades are important indicators in school, I use them to define myself, instead of using them as indicators of my progress. I became entirely represented by a few letters or a number and nothing more. This led to cutting corners on assignments in various ways to ensure that I would always get good grades on these assignments. And while I approached school in this way during my entire career as a student, this semester has led me to change my approach. I was fortunate enough to be assigned to Dr. Pittard's EQ class this semester, and among the many wonderful things I've experienced in that class, the most unique one is what she calls a gradeless approach. Instead of assigning a grade outright to an essay or speech, Dr. Pittard requires us to submit an additional document stating what grade we think we should receive and why we should receive that grade. Then she will respond to this additional document, and if she disagrees, we'll open the floor to more discussion on the matter. This approach has been extremely refreshing and has helped my classmates and me to really question whether or not we had done an assignment well. It suddenly became harder to cut corners on assignments to get a good grade, especially when I had to grade it myself. Instead, by forcing me to evaluate how much I had learned, learning became the focus, rather than the grade I received for the assignment. I think this adjustment and focus can help Wabash students as a whole. The pressure that grades and GPAs create lead to many of us still cutting corners or giving up on assignments because of the focus on the grades, rather than the learning that occurs during the assignment itself. The gradeless approach has the potential to revitalize the way many of us approach our classes, and I think it will help campus to refocus on learning. As students, it is our responsibility to recognize that learning is more important than the grade we receive for an assignment. Cutting corners on a project may bump your class average up by a few points, but it sacrifices that learning opportunity. This transition in our way of thinking is a difficult one, as we've been programmed from our earliest years of school to define our performance in school by grades. However, as I stated earlier, grades are merely indicators of our performance and don't tell the entire story. A student with a B average who focuses on learning is likely better than a student with an A average who uses ChatGPT and Chegg on all of their assignments. So focus on learning rather than just completing an assignment for the grade. For teachers, I understand that a gradeless approach, like how Dr. Pittard teaches it, is not feasible in every classroom setting. The mitochondria will always be the powerhouse of the cell, no matter how much a student can attempt to convince you otherwise. However, creating different assignments that offer questions without straightforward answers can help students along their journey of learning. For instance, my computer science course this semester not only grades the validity of the code itself, but our understanding and approach to how we try to solve it. By grading the approach to the assignment in addition to the answer itself, students can focus more on their journey in education rather than getting the answer at any cost. Small changes like these can have a significant impact and will help to promote learning. Now, I can acknowledge that my point may have some flaws. I haven't spent a lifetime researching this subject, and most of what I talked about today comes from personal experience. However, I think that many of us can relate to the pressure that grades create, and if we try to change the way we approach education here at Wabash and beyond, I really do think we can encourage better learning habits. Thank you.
Good morning, Wabash. First, I would like to begin by thanking the Sphinx Club and Dr. Pittard for the honor and privilege to be standing up here before you today. I would also like to thank Hugh Vanderveer and all my Phi Delta brothers for their constant support and love and helping me prepare for this moment. As many of you know, choosing where to go to school is very difficult. This was no different for me. In fact, it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make. No matter what I chose, I felt like I was letting someone down or missing out on an opportunity. If I went far, I wouldn't see my girlfriend, my family, my friends, and would miss out on important events and memories. But if I stayed close, I would miss out on endless opportunities that prestigious colleges and universities could offer me. It almost felt like it was a lose-lose situation. I had to choose between taking a risk and going off on myself or staying home and conforming with my normal life. I arrived here on campus for Admitted Students Weekend, and my choice became clear. There's a culture and environment that seems impossible to escape here at Wabash. I still cannot describe the initial feeling, and it is something I believe that you have to experience for yourself to understand. Eventually, I chose Wabash and decided to come here and be alone and experience what it was like to be independent for once. At the beginning, it was difficult. I missed my family, my friends, my girlfriend, my house. I just wanted to go home every weekend and didn't like it here. I was very unhappy with how I started. Class was hard, it was very work demanding, and pledgeship had just started, and my girlfriend was in my ear chirping to transfer. I applied to different universities and really considered leaving. This was until I got to experience chapel sing and homecoming. Easily one of the best moments here at Wabash and of my life so far. The energy of that week was crazy and unmatched. This is where I really got to experience the Wabash family and brotherhood that everyone bragged about. This is also when I questioned why I wanted to leave, asking myself, why would I want to leave a place that I've actually began to love so much? I then decided it was best for me to stay at Wabash. But now I'm going to tell you, think back to your freshman year, to your first semester. How were things then? And how have things changed since then? For better? For worse? I'm sure everyone has had a similar struggle or experience to the one I'm sharing with you today. I think it is normal to have these experiences when initially arriving. But I think the beauty of it is finding something within this campus that makes this place worth it and valuable. Whether it is the TGIFs every Friday, something you're learning in class, a bond you're creating with the brothers around you, or yearly traditions that are treated with such respect. For me, EQ played a big role in self-reflection. More specifically, reading the story of Gilgamesh. Funny enough, at first, I hated Gilgamesh. I thought it was boring, and I didn't want to read it at all. However, something in me decided to give it a try. Reading this story is when I realized that looking at everyone around you as competitors rather than brothers is a mistake. I saw a glimpse of my character in Gilgamesh in that aspect. This story has also taught me that sometimes you cannot skim through the hard. You have to really dive in and put effort to get better outcomes. What I mean by not skim through it is not letting your initial reactions affect how you view the rest of the story. If I were to just skim through Gilgamesh, I wouldn't have been able to take away the lesson that I did and use it to reflect on myself. With that being said, don't skim, take your time, and make the most out of every moment. The freshman experience is one that can go many ways. Some are comfortable and happy right away, while others take some time to adjust, and some don't at all. I think that's the beauty of it, though. Not sticking to a template and finding your own path. Learning more about yourself while trying to adjust to what will become your new reality. I believe the most important factor in this is making decisions for yourself and not for others. Allowing others to influence your way of thinking without defining it. At first, I truly believed I disliked Wabash, and I really wanted to leave. But it wasn't until I allowed myself to really experience this college for what it was that I found that I actually love this place more than I knew. I finally stopped skimming and learned to enjoy the moment and where I was for what it was rather than for what others wanted to make it to be. Thank you.
Good morning, Wabash. I'd first like to thank the Sphinx Club and Dr. Biddard for arranging me to speak to you all today. I'd also like to thank my brothers over at Delt for always supporting me, as well as inspiring certain aspects of this speech. I also would love to thank my parents, who have never stopped loving and supporting me throughout my journey here. To start this speech, I apologize in advance if I have a voice crack. I'm still a growing boy. Or as Peter Lighthouser might say, little boy, little boy. On that subject, though, I'm here to talk to you all about how my masculinity has shaped my first year here at Wabash. At this point in my life, I'm not comfortable calling myself a man yet. As Justin Baldoni said in his TED Talk, Why I'm Done Trying to Be Man Enough, I feel like I've been putting on a show. I don't believe I've earned the title just yet. To some of you, that might seem out of the ordinary. I'm 19 years old. I can vote, be drafted, maybe even trick a store clerk into thinking I'm 21. But even with that, I don't believe I'm a man yet. This comes down to how I define my masculinity. I define it as somebody who's completely comfortable with themselves. Your definition might be different, more traditional, more progressive, but this one's mine. I haven't experienced, learned, or lived enough to know and truly understand myself, and that's okay. However, it has impacted how I've had to navigate my first year here at Wabash. I know some of my fellow freshmen, and hopefully some of you upperclassmen can relate when I say fitting in is tough. Those first few weeks when everything is thrown at you, chapel sing, homecoming, it's tough. Orientation is hard, Wabash is hard, fitting in, it's hard. Nevertheless, I can call this place home. It just took me a while to get there. Wabash, we're an all-male institution. We have this aura of masculinity. We take off our shirts when we play the pipsqueaks down south. We get loud at inopportune times, and we watch 3-hour baseball games, just us, and some of us even bring couches out to the outfield. Our school is very typically masculine, not how I define masculine. That's no huge issue for me now because I've grown to love to do these things with my brothers, my friends, my teammates. But I was never a massive fan of sitting down watching sports or taking off my shirt to prove I was strong. I was never your typical masculine boy. I got soft hands, you could say. This did affect me at the start of my Wabash career. I felt isolated on weekends, not knowing what to do with my free time. I even felt not man enough with my pledge brothers because I didn't do the typical masculine things that they did. But I've now learned that they've always accepted me. It just took one night where I opened up about my struggles and insecurities to them. I cried that night in front of all of them. I took the risk of being completely open, vulnerable, weak, but they stood by me. My pledge brothers have been a rock for me ever since. I've struggled with viewing myself as worthy for a long time now. Throughout high school, I was scared to get changed in the locker room with my teammates because I was insecure that I was not strong enough. I made harsh jokes belittling people because I was unsure how I viewed my own masculinity. And my pledge brothers, thankfully, have allowed me to move past those insecurities. They've proved to me that my definition of masculinity is okay. In the almost 2 semesters that I've been on campus, I've learned 3 essential things. Masculinity, it's more complex than one might think. It's okay to not be okay. And AJ Reed hits bombs. We're all different. We all have our own insecurities. We all go through struggles, and we have our own version of masculinity. It's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be a work in progress. It's okay to not be okay. And please don't take my speech as the gospel. I'm not right. That's a point I want to make to you all today. Masculinity, it's subjective. Own your version. I'm way too young to tell people what masculinity is or isn't. I'm only 19 years old. I haven't been able to vote in a presidential election yet. I doubt I'll ever be drafted, and I have never been able to trick a store clerk into thinking I'm 21. I want to believe that my ideas on masculinity, life, love, and everything change as I change and mature. If they haven't, I haven't changed, and I haven't grown as a person. We're supposed to change. We're supposed to change our thoughts and ideas. But as it stands right now in my life, being completely comfortable with myself as a definition of my masculinity, it fits where I'm at. And it's helped me get through my first year here. Wabash, we're an all-male institution. We are all men of Wabash. We take off our shirts to assert dominance over the Dannies. We yell at the top of our lungs because we care, and we lounge around with the homies watching 3-hour baseball games, and one of us may or may not have dropped a beer on the warning track. That's neither here nor there. However, we also discuss positive masculinity in class. We open up to our friends, our brothers, and we promote happy and healthy manhood day in, day out. We are men of Wabash. I am a man of Wabash. Maybe not a man in my own eyes yet, but that's okay. I'll get there. We all do. But Wabash is where we welcome, motivate, we love each other. We are a brotherhood, and brotherhood sustains us. Lastly, I implore you to all explore your own masculinity and define it for yourself. Wabash always fights. Thank you.